Uganda, good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hot Seat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Kamara. Kampala today is like a construction site if you move in some roads, and because they're trying to make the roads better, I think they are also not doing a good job, because in some cases, some sections, some entrances and exits are totally blocked. So people who want to get into some businesses or get out, sometimes they find themselves trapped. I think the road constructors can do a good job. Tonight we'll be looking into, many members of parliament have come out with propositions of reforms, electoral reforms, constitutional reforms. Some reforms are to do with changing the number, reducing the number of legislators. Some reforms are to do with cutting down on term limits or bringing back the term limits. And also some reforms are to do with the administration of parliament, and others, the election of the leader of opposition. What does this mean? Can we really have these reforms? Will they make Uganda a better place in terms of a democracy that we are trying to build? Because I can imagine we are a democracy that is in a process of getting, we are making baby steps in building a democracy. Let me introduce my guests this evening who have made it in the studio. I'm sure they have been able to go through the encumbrances of the road construction works that's going on. We cannot complain that much because we need the roads, but we wish they could do better in planning when they are working on the roads in the middle of the city. Let me introduce my guest. I have Senior Presidential Advisor, Mr. Moses Byaruhanga. Again, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patrick.
I thought you were supposed to introduce in form of arrivals.
But you see, no, but the thing is, something you can come early, but in terms of protocol,
Okay, sir.
don't worry. Here it is. First arrival, last recognized. It's okay. Senior Presidential Advisor Moses Byaruhanga, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Patrick. My colleague Godman in the studio, and our listeners out there.
Why do I always have a feeling that you and Good sort of have some kind of sibling rivalry? You're always harassing each other.
No way. That's comradeship.
There's this rivalry I don't understand.
It's comradeship, yes. Yeah, but I know he's a leader of opposition outside parliament.
They have started their thing.
I am the leader of the resistance outside parliament.
They have started their thing.
Yes.
Ugandans, those listeners, from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, Mr. Godbert Mushabe, welcome to the show, sir.
A great pleasure to be here. Good evening, our listeners.
And we understand our professor should be joining us shortly. He's been globe trotting.
He's working on the roads.
The last time we checked, he was somewhere in Kosovo. But now, Godbert, I have heard members of parliament had an opportunity this week to host the former leader of opposition, the Honorable Matthias Mpuga, who's also trying to come up with reforms, electoral constitutional reforms. For him, he says he wants to make sure they bring back the term limits. He wants to make sure that the members of parliament are reduced at least 149. As per the districts we have 149, including the women representatives, and remove some of these special interest groups and all this kind of stuff. And say, if you are having an election, then results for presidential should be also announced at the district level. You don't have to wait to bring them at the national level. But what do you make of this proposition that people are bringing at a time like this now? Already the roadmap is on for elections 2026.
I would say categorically that I think everybody here is trying to cheat. Anybody who is talking about reforms is trying to cheat.
What?
Yeah, they are trying to cheat. These are all maneuvers. All of them probably intended to achieve very, very deceptive objectives. Because right now where the country is, our problem is not constitutional or electoral reforms. Our problem is political. So the only thing that I can see happening, and we say we are making progress, is if Museveni and all the people that he has been fighting with and brutalizing and complaining that they have stolen his votes, I would want to see them seated in one place saying we need a better country. When you have a president of a country, the chief executive officer, chief law enforcement officer, commander-in-chief, standing there in a public, just talking to Ugandans and the international community openly, saying, these guys stole my 1 million votes, you know that you have a crisis. That crisis cannot be solved by someone coming and say, this is an amendment of what. No, you have a deep crisis. And Ugandans need to understand that the crisis we have is deeper. You know, a president, do you know what a president means?
The vanguard of honor, the fountain of honor.
And the guy is standing there in public on TV saying, oh, Noop stole my 1 million votes. I mean, you have to really cry for this country, because then you know that the lawlessness I've been talking about is real. Because if a president is going to complain like an NGO activist, like an ordinary person like you, Patrick, and me, Godba, then you know you have a deeper crisis that has nothing to do with electoral reforms.
So now, how do we bring back the country, in your view, to the correct path if it is not through reforms?
So for me,
if not through the available channels, including Parliament.
I have presented my ideas on how this problem can be solved. I know we've debated it here. My brother Moses has had some reservations. I have said this country requires a national dialogue. You know, in 1980, when Museveni felt like he was cheated, or the elections were cheated, he went and fought a 5-year war that led to the death of more than 500,000 Ugandans. And he came to power and said, we need to solve this problem. And in 1988, put together a constitutional commission that was able to consult all Ugandans and say, how do we govern ourselves? By 1995, we had what you would call a compact, imperfect as it was. Say, this is how we will govern ourselves. The book I'm working on now, which should be coming out any time, is how the regime, the current regime under Museveni, has abrogated the 1995 constitution, basically destroyed the consensus that was negotiated. So once you don't have the 1995 consensus, and because it has not been honored, then as Ugandans we need to go back and renegotiate the consensus. So there is no amount of reform, no election that is going to solve our problems.
But it's okay. Before I go, I'll bring this question later, because it can also be very hard even to constitute that who comprises the delegate has come to the.
No, incidentally for the national dialogue, everything that needs to be done and how it should be done has been sorted. In fact, by the way, in December of 2018, President Museveni signed a communique that was outlining how this dialogue is done.
Mr. Moses Byarhanga, you're a senior presidential advisor, and we have had members of parliament. We also expect, by the way, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Nyonebo Nobot Mao, also to table his proposed constitutional reforms. Do you think these reforms, in your view...
To table them where?
It's Parliament. Cabinet first and then Parliament.
I doubt.
Okay, so you don't. At least he has talked about them, that he has an intention of bringing them to cabinet, and then from cabinet, of course, they come to Parliament. But do you think we need these reforms?
But my brother Mao should know how government operates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He should know. Yeah. And he not take people for a ride.
Yeah.
You see, before a ministry brings a paper, what they call a white paper, although they are pink, to cabinet, there is internal consultations in the ministry. If it's a policy position, if it's a law, there's the draft people do the drafting. It is agreed upon in the top management of a ministry. Then after that, if you want to go to cabinet, they seek a cabinet minute to be given time and opportunity, and it is scheduled because it's not the only one among many papers. Then you go to cabinet, and the cabinet deliberates, depending on how long it takes within cabinet. When cabinet is done with it, then you go public. You can now go public. But now for you, you're starting with the last step. Going public.
No, I actually think Mao is a pretender.
You see, you start with the last step of going public. Because see, like now, if it was a cabinet position,
You know, when somebody with de facto power talks, then you know his proposition is dead on arrival.
The deep state.
When the deep state speaks.
I totally agree with Moses.
So Mao started with that. For me, he started with the last step. If you had the steps to follow, internal. So because to the best of my knowledge, it's not yet before cabinet. And I'm not so sure if the ministry or top management has already passed it. I'm not sure about that. But be it as it may, as I say, now that he has gone public, I don't know whether these are now his personal views or the views of the government. Or those are two different things.
Okay, it doesn't matter, but they look at the views anyway.
It matters, Patrick, please. It matters.
Because if it's a good view,
it matters.
If it is a good view, if it's a good proposition, why would
but
you?
Must also
What matter would be the proposition is making.
But you must pass it within your own ministry first, so that they own up. Everybody owns up. It's a ministry's position. Then you go to cabinet. But that on the side. So when I look at them individually, one by one, I don't see the merit, because any law, whether constitutional or whether it's a constitution or the ordinary laws, it must be addressing something agreed upon. So when I see, for instance, take the example of those who Mao and others, Mpug and others, saying the president of Uganda should be elected by parliament. That's a very serious matter. I don't see the NRM agreeing to that, because NRM is for mass, for the majority, for many people to be involved. Now you have the many people, Ugandans, adult suffrage, who are 18 years and above, and are registered voters, participating in the election of the president. Now, how do you come and take out that power from them? And I haven't researched this, but to the best of my knowledge, I remember one time we discussed it like 2 weeks ago, but since then I haven't done further research. I wouldn't be surprised if that amendment of taking away the power of electing the president from the people to parliament, if it doesn't require a referendum. I need to consult some lawyers about it. But anybody there who has information can.
I think it's an entrenched.
I think it's an entrenched provision, but I will check it. I don't want. But so if it is entrenched, then it will be very difficult to change it now. If it's not entrenched, still, the fact that Ugandans will all participate in the election of the president, how do you take out that power from us? And at this moment in time, and take it to the parliament, because it was there before. The president of
parliamentary
democracy, Prime Minister Obote was elected by parliament in 1962. That was there. But now, when the Ugandans, through the Dutch Constitutional Commission, when they express their views, they needed. They requested to elect the president directly.
But also, if they are electing members of parliament have some kind of delegated authority from the people.
They have, but
which is still okay.
Electing a chief executive of a country, as of now, if Mao went through, supported it through cabinet and so forth, I as Moses, I would not support it. That idea, I'll just keep quiet. But I will not support it. Now, the others are they're removing the interest groups from parliament. But even on that one, the weakness I see in it, this chief executive elected by parliament. First of all, in the countries where the parliamentary democracy is existing or being practiced, the chief executive has power to dissolve parliament. They are quiet on that. They don't talk about it. That this person elected by parliament can also dissolve parliament. Two, then the same parliament can remove that chief executive.
So I think it is giving some checks and balances instead of putting a lot of power into one person, which is, I suppose, is a good thing.
No, power is in the people. They don't elect the president. They don't can remove him through another election. But if it is a small group, you have seen how governments have been falling in some of these European countries. In 1 year, or about 2 years, UK had some
like four prime ministers.
Four prime ministers. You don't want that kind of instability in a developing country, in a younger democracy like Uganda.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a mega break. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat, and my guest this evening.
You can put off the off-air discussion.
Oh my God, that will be so explosive. The things you talk off air here.
No, Moses talks off air, not me.
And by the way, one of the Moses Biarhanga, senior presidential advisor.
I was quiet.
Is that blackmail or exposure?
By the way, you know we also have our oath of secrecy.
I know.
For off air, you know.
I do.
So
very unwritten, but very heavy.
If only there could be some fly on the wall.
No, I follow their rules.
Okay, the man following the rules of Chatham House, I had not yet introduced him. Professor Jerry Adikareja, fresh from Europe, Kiva Bulaya. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Pleasure to be here with my colleagues and
probably you're listening
yourself.
You're in Penkoni as you came here, but in case you didn't, I was trying to tell the colleagues that there are a number of members of parliament who are proposing electoral and constitutional reforms, and these reforms include, they're bringing the return of term limits. Some of them, the parliamentary democracy. Others want results of election for the president announced at the district level, and reducing on the numerical strength of the House, of the legislature. Your take about these reforms, on whether this is what perhaps is missing in our young democracy.
Thank you, Patrick. Permit me to go symbolic before I go substantive.
The form before the substance.
The form before the substance.
The form before the substance. Okay.
Other than today, I confirmed why I should become the next KCCA executive director when I pass through all these roads and so forth.
Hey, okay.
So watch the space.
Moses,
okay.
You are hearing? Are you listening?
Now, about the reforms.
Hey, you are seeing. Yeah.
In my view, what is on the politician's mind now is not any reform. It's not anything. What takes precedence and what preoccupies them is the next election. And now it is too late to destabilize the status quo for those who want to be in that space, because they've been practicing scheming, manipulating, organizing, mobilizing within the current framework of the law, of the social architecture, and so on and so forth. So whether they are from the opposition or from government, I doubt the intentions other than getting political capital out of it, that they are pushing for reforms, and the reforms are for the best interest of this country. I don't think at this point in time, electoral and constitutional reforms are the most critical thing the government, the country is looking forward to. And that is why the debate and the discussion has largely remained within the political elite.
In opposition.
And less about the population. The population is less bothered about what's going on.
Is Mao still in opposition, by the way?
For Honorable Mao,
it's neither here nor there.
For Honorable Mao, I think my hunch is that
it's firing some flares.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
My hunch is that Honorable Mao, when he was crossing to the NRM or writing the memorandum or joining government, he publicized that he had made a contract, and in that contract he had to deliver reforms. That's what he publicized. So I think he's just still telling those who believed him that he's still pursuing that idea. I'm a student of public policy and I follow what goes on in government. Usually when such things which are going to inform laws or policies are coming up, they do what they call a RIA, a regulatory impact assessment. It hasn't been done. Usually such things are on what is called the cabinet forward agenda. It's not there. So, Honorable, I'm a student of public policy and I can't teach what I don't observe. So,
Or you are a teacher?
I'm a teacher. Both.
No.
So the point I'm trying to make...
Teachers normally we like saying we are students.
Yeah.
You're always learning.
Because you're always learning.
Yeah, you're always learning.
So from the perspective of how government works, No, but Mao is still at the stage of ideation, where you have thoughts in your mind, and they are still at that level.
But they are now in public.
Which document is it? Which document are you referring to? How do you reference it? Where is it? Other than his thoughts and minds and words like we're doing now. I've not seen another document anywhere. Not even within the ministry, not anywhere else. So one can talk about it when he delivers it. So I find difficulty in discussing the substantiveness of his thoughts and ideas until even just the structure of government documents now, because government is pushing for evidence-based, information-based decision-making processes. And the logic is simple. We have a problem, and these are the possible solutions, and this is the recommendation. What problem is Mao chewing?
Okay, let me paraphrase this question. So
Honorable Mao, I think he's playing his usual political gymnastics.
As a student of public policy and a professor, do you see something missing in our young democracy? And how do we fix it?
Actually, globally, we are in a democratic deficit and decline at a global level. Go to the US, go globally. So now the concept of democracy is at stake, and we are part of the international arena. So we are in that space, experimenting and doing what we can. So really, I'm not being unfair to Honorable Mao, but I think that if he's convinced us that what he's doing, he's meaning it, then let him do it as it ought to. So even if it is his own idea, then let him make it very clear.
Okay.
And for those in the opposition.
Okay, you in the interest of time, you and Mr. Byarhanga seem to have spoken with clarity on how things should be. So, Mr. Byarhanga, do you think now Mr. Mao, among his colleagues, should be called to order to do things right? Because he has already uttered things in public.
Well, that's not for me to comment on.
He deserves to be called to order, right?
That's not for me to comment on. But
the way how you avoid some of this.
That's why he has survived for 40 years. you think you just survived very quickly?
Just jumps over. Okay, all right. That's not for me.
As the judge is saying, I already mentioned that. See, procedure is by the time you talk about a paper for presentation to cabinet, it must have been discussed internally within a ministry. And each ministry has a top management. Top management goes through it. Maybe it would have been within that for a year. Like now, these are serious issues. They have had the pros and cons, and you go top management. It is passed. When it is passed and agreed upon, then you approach cabinet secretariat for scheduling.
Mr.
Now that all that has not been done, so that's what I was saying. Then by the time you go public, either you have presented it, it's being discussed within the cabinet, or cabinet has gone through it, is waiting presentation to parliament. Then you can go public. That's why I was saying Mao seems to have started with the last stage. Last stage where by the time you go public, you have gone through all this. But when you go to the substance of it that I was talking about, for instance, if you're talking about women representation in parliament, and you say a woman MP should not go beyond 2 terms, unless you want to fix it for all the other members of parliament. The idea of women representation or representation of interest groups is not meant about this lady or this youth MP or this other person. It's about the group. Now, if the one who are electing that person feel that this lady is
fighting for their cause,
they can vote her so many times in parliament.
Okay,
and besides, it's not about the person; it's about the group. Okay. Now, for you to say
the constituency,
that constituency is represented at any moment in parliament, it would be wrong. Now, you imagine going to the same house where the MPs, women MPs, who are like they are in the first term, or they are in the second term, and you are saying you can't serve more than twice, and you're saying you go to that member of that house and pass the women vote for that and pass it.
No, they cannot fail. You really poured cold water on these propositions made by the honorable members. In fact, some of them are senior members, like the Honorable Nwagawa, Norbert Mao, and people like Mpuga, former leader of opposition. You really think, what do you think is their intent? Because earlier you said they want to cheat us. Have they all conspired to cheat?
Look here.
What do you think is the intent?
You see, so let me, Patrick, let's be serious.
He's breaking now the oath of secrecy. Things out off mic now.
Sometimes one of the biggest challenges we have in this country is that people want to debate things in a logical way, as if there is logic in what is being done in many places. Many of the things, the Moses Biaruhanga's regime is an informal regime. It runs informally. So even when he tells you bring the thing to cabinet is of no consequence in this country. Cabinet is just a formal structure that formalizes informal decisions. Everybody knows that if you want to get serious things done in this country, you are going to go meet with Salim Saleh. That's what you do, because we have seen it where you
seem to suggest that all other agencies and departments are like
but we know
arms of an octopus.
Look, we've seen the Prime Minister of Uganda go to meet with Salim Saleh, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance. You can heads of agencies, because I track many of these meetings because I know the policy implications and the political implications of having this done. So people like Mao, yeah. So remember that we've had two major amendments of the Constitution. 2005, the removal of term limits. You have to look back. How was it done?
I was here.
Yes.
I was back.
Remember.
Some people were bribed with 5 million. You are there.
No, wait a moment.
No.
I know.
Confession.
I know
I'm
that.
waiting for the confession.
In fact, when Moses tells you, if you listen to Moses carefully, from Changwanzi, he's the one who convened the meeting of RDCs at Serena there to plot.
Moses?
Yeah. To plot the removal of term limits.
Okay, gentlemen, we're taking a break.
But I need to complete that thought when we're back, because
Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the hot seat. My guest this evening, I've Godba Tumushabe, Mr. Moses Biaruhanga, and Professor Jared Karija. Godba, before we took a break, you were making allegations that...
No, these are not allegations. These are facts.
Okay.
These are facts.
Constitutional
yes, absolutely. These are facts. So that's how the term limits... Moses manages that with the RDCs, and they were able to get all these resolutions from the local governments, and then the MPs get their 5 million, pocket it, change the constitution. In 2017,
I wish the listener could see how Moses is looking at you right now. but they can imagine.
In 2017, the removal of age limit. This was done. The process was championed by Raphael Magezi. Yeah, the group that was plotting the removal of age limit was meeting in Ministry of Finance under Bahati. That's where everything was done. It was never done in some cabinet place, white paper and all that kind of thing. So the point I'm making is that all these things are informal. So they only come to the formal structures of government when they have been planned. So I would not be surprised if Mao is working for someone who is interested in how you actually change the constitution. So he will come, because Mao is not a below average Ugandan. When he's a cabinet minister, he knows how cabinet run. So he cannot just come as an errand boy and start saying, I am bringing reforms. I mean, you are a cabinet minister, later on a minister of justice, because, you know, in serious governments, there are ministries that are very, very important. Defense, foreign affairs, internal affairs, finance, justice. Those are supposed to be serious people. So you can't be a minister for justice and you come and start talking for that you are doing reforms. By the time you do it, even if the ministry people do not know, because the ministry people do not know where you take your instructions from. So I would be surprised. I would not be surprised if Mao is representing some of those informal platforms that make decisions in this country. I have written a paper that is published entitled Uganda's Political Transition Scenarios to 2026 and Beyond.
Published where?
It's published by Greece.
Okay.
So in that paper, I basically argued that the most consequential constitutional amendment that Museveni will make before he leaves office is going to be change of system of government. That's the most consequential. All these other things that MPs are talking about, that's a no-brainer. They are of little consequence. Women MPs, what? That's really noise. That is noise.
He's making a case that power in Uganda is embedded in these informalities. There's the informal areas. People converge somewhere in Nakapeka.
I actually want to talk to Moses rather than looking for a minister. I will be talking to Moses. Yeah.
And he gives some examples to back his argument.
Well, whether you start informally, you must reach a point and formalize. Well, at the end of the day,
the point and rubber stamp.
No. Because at the end of the day, your wishes, whether informal or formal, must go through a process. Going by talking about in 2003, when there were debates on the constitutional amendment on the term limits. First of all, we had a constitutional review commission, you recall, headed by Professor Sempebwa. Professor Sempebwa made a report on constitutional reforms, and the question of term limits came up in that report, and the majority of the people who made their views to the Sempebwa Commission wished the removal of term limits. That's a fact.
Please, was that not a fact?
That's a fact. That's a fact. No, that's a fact. Professor Sempebwa, as the chairman of the commission, this is democracy, wrote a minority paper of his own commission
because he knew that the idea of term limits was not in the
Wait. They went around the country gathering views. Professor Sempebwa didn't want to remove term limits. He wrote a minority report opposing the move of term limits. But at least there's evidence. It must be in the archives that the views gathered by the Professor Sempebwa Commission, the majority were saying we remove term limits and go the way it is now. So the meeting which so there was a backing. The issue of term limits, there was a backing from the constitution, from the Ugandans who present their views. Godba may not have represented his views, but there was a commission which was open. And they could receive views from anyone.
Don't be like Trump.
No. I'm talking about facts. Because as I know them, it's a good thing I lived them. I didn't read about them. I lived them. Now, so the meeting, what you talk about, we had a meeting in Chankwanzi in 2003, I think around March, thereabout. And the NEC, the National Executive Committee of the NRM, passed the resolution that will remove term limits and also there's return to multipartyism. There had been a commission which had been set up within the NRM, headed by Dr. Kionga, the NPC then, whether to go multi-party or remain under movement system. Some of the majority of that committee, the majority of members recommended continuation of the movement system, but Mzee and Sali made a minority report also saying, no, I disagree with my colleagues, and made that report. The president agreed with the position of Mzee and Sali of saying, let's go multi-party and put it to the people of Uganda. So the meeting you are referring to, which I had with leaders you referred to it, I was briefing them what happened in Chankwanzi, because they were not in Chankwanzi. I was briefing them what happened in Chankwanzi, and so that they also know they are part of the decision-making process. But so when you look at some of these amendments being made, being brought up by many members from the opposition, I don't see them going through.
Why?
Because of the what are they solving? What are they solving? It must be a law, whether ordinary law or a constitutional amendment, must be addressing an issue. Now, if you think you want to return term limits today, I don't see it passing that parliament, to be fair to you. If you want to, the other ones, they are saying that reducing the size of parliament.
The term limits provide maybe efficient, transition from one president to another.
The whole of Europe is about one of the mothers of democracy. They have never had term limits. The whole of Europe. You tell me a European country, and they are all very democratic. They don't have term limits. So it doesn't necessarily mean...
It's better for a young democracy to have term limits, so at least you can know. Because for them, they have been doing this for centuries.
We can debate it, but they started also, they were young at one stage. They did start with term limits and then they moved them. They were also young. So it doesn't mean... Yes, you argument that for a young country, they were also young at some stage, but they never started with it. And I've read European history very extensively, both in school and outside school. I've never seen where any European country has had term.
Moses, the scare is, in most examples in Africa, when a president is around for many years, the moment they leave, in most cases, those countries descend into chaos. And yet we have seen examples where, like Tanzania, like Botswana, when they keep changing, there seems some kind of stability.
No, it's because, see, NRM, you have been coming with your candidates very weak and they are defeated. So you have not had a chance of winning NRM. That's the problem. It's not a problem as such, but Ugandans have loved the NRM and the candidate has been bringing. So what's the problem with
even when NRM, even when they cheat you of 1 million votes, like
I can assure you, you will still win. You will still win even when they cheat us. Even when they cheat us, they still win. But I can assure you, with the building of the institutions of state.
Which ones?
Institutions of the state.
Like which ones?
The judiciary, the army. Which is a very crucial institution of the state. Some of the African countries are mentioning which have descended when somebody had left it was because he didn't have these institutions built. And even the democratic process itself, Ugandans are now using every 5 years we go for election. They know it. If you told them so there's no election tomorrow, there will be trouble. But so I see, whether we have had such challenges in some countries, I don't see it happening in Uganda. Just because President Museveni has been there for many years, in those many years he has built institutions which will stay even when it's not there. Okay. And keep the country together.
The sweetness of the pudding is in testing it, so we can't really know whether they will be able to stay or not, because in some countries the institutions looked actually more robust. For example, a country like maybe like Libya and Egypt at one point, or even Sudan here, which is in flames.
Oh, Sudan, what was it?
And the Bashir Sudan was a very strong country.
It was a dictatorship. Strong in which strength?
This one, I think we should have recorded it.
Bashir was sponsoring LRA. That was sponsoring terrorism. LRA was killing people in Uganda, and Bashir was...
Garang was on his neck, so he had to put...
But yeah, if you want support...
With your support.
If you want support is something different.
But Uganda supported SPLA for ages. Yeah, so basically, and you see, depending on who is speaking, you can end up basically making the same argument.
Earlier, the argument was the whole world, there's a deficit of democracy. So, but then we have our peculiar, unique challenges as a country. So don't you think, how would we handle them? Especially, I'm sure Ugandans would want to see, a transition. The parliament is just too big for sure, but because the public administration is just over the roof. So we need to handle this. Somebody is suggesting some ideas on how we can handle our unique issues.
Yeah. I want to disagree with Moses that the whole of Europe, there are no term limits. We have term limits in Finland, we have term limits in Austria, we have term limits for the president in Germany, the head of state. Yeah, though much as the head of government, we don't. So, so term limits in some European countries exist. They are few, but they are there. So it is something that if Ugandans choose to have term limits and they think that they work for them, I think it's an engagement that Ugandans can be free to pursue, and if it serves them, then they reinstate it in the constitution. That's my take on that. Yes, governance is there is no magic bullet to governance. But for those who have the responsibility to direct the mind and will of the state and government have a duty to increase the opportunities for each and everybody, and for everybody to become better spiritually, politically, economically, and otherwise. So when we see a lot of debate and excitement and confusion in the political space, then it means that something needs to be fixed. The question is, what exactly is it? But for me, I think that most of the debate in the political space is targeting 2026 and less about reforms. Two,
but that's too late for 2026. Or they just want to...
No. They are playing a game to have advantage. Politicians will always politic and play politics. And actually, they calculate. They do games, mental games, scenarios, and whatever. And so most of these people are trying to see how best they position themselves to be in the post-2026 privileged political class, whether in the position or in the government, but either way, you are dependent on government by either opposing it or by supporting it. And the politicians, many of them, that's their large politicians. I'm not seeing any of them aggregating interests of Ugandans to pursue the public interest and common good. Unfortunately, that's the stance I have for the current political debate. But yes, we need to have political hygiene in our country. I think one of the institutions that has really been put on the spot is the Electoral Commission. The opposition is saying the Electoral Commission does not produce credible elections. If we are to go by the president, he said even Noop stole 1 million
votes.
votes.
He's very precise even on the figure.
So if it is true that can happen, then one would have expected to see what happened in cases here with the Chitezi. So
yeah,
the actions and the pronouncements are not matching. So, but the EC is in an awkward position. So it's up to the EC now to prove that it can actually deliver an election to begin with. Deliver on a free, fair, credible to deliver an election. Because if all contenders can say that there's no election, it's about cheating and everybody has evidence of who else cheated, then
but this one,
I think, Gerard, you have too much faith. You have too much faith.
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
This is not about the Electoral Commission.
No, yes. Yeah. No, for me, it is about the Electoral Commission.
No, but
yes.
Actually, I thought the president was joking on that one.
No, you can't joke as a president unless you are...
Well, if he joked,
you can't
assuming he joked...
I think he joked, really.
The implications are far-reaching.
Yeah.
Actually, my next question is, then, given what the opposition is saying and government is saying, do we need to have elections?
But we have a senior presidential advisor and a real advisor.
And must we have them under this Electoral Commission?
Let me say
when you tell
Moses, when you tell your votes, you really vote.
You ask him, was the president joking or he was serious?
He was serious.
Yeah, very good. So that's settled.
First of all,
yeah.
Oh my God.
So that's settled. Patrick,
I want to,
1 million votes?
I want to correct my young brother here, Gerard. When I say there are no term limits in most of Europe, and the examples he's giving of Finland, of Austria, those ones have term limits for the president who is not the head of government. But
who does not have executive power.
Yeah. For the head of government in Finland, called the prime minister, no direct term limits. However, they must maintain support of Finnish parliament, blah, blah, blah. The same for Austria. So I still maintain my position.
Now I know why. It was spent on the computer, rattling it.
Googling it.
Now we have qualified it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, this is what we're going to do. A minute for each one of us. For you, as you give us your concluding remark.
So first of all, let me just reaffirm the fact that President Museveni is part of our problem because he has established a system that he can't trust. He has even put
He
his...
can also be part of a solution, right?
Yeah, of course, if he chose, he can be part of the solution. Just remember that in the case of Brenda Nabukenya in Ruwero, Museveni wrote a very long missive explaining how his votes in Ruwero were stolen. If the Electoral Commission, the chairman of Yabakama, if he was a serious man, he definitely would have resigned. You can't be a judge of the High Court, and you are told that this is what the president is saying, his votes were stolen.
1 million.
Then you remain there and you say, I'm chairman. That's really too low. Finally, I'm saying, as a country, we are being taken for a ride. Ugandans need to appreciate that these politicians, from Museveni to the opposition politicians, they are taking us for a ride. They are really playing brinkmanship. They know that they are diverting everybody. They are not dealing with the policy issues that affect this country. And Ugandans need to be able to rise up and find a way of how you take this country back and get these politicians and put them back in order.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moses Byarhanga. Your concluding remark on the show.
My concluding remark is that I think Uganda should be set for the next electoral process, which starts next. Well, some of the activities could have started this year according to the roadmap of the Electoral Commission. I don't see any amendments which are necessary today, either constitutional or otherwise. What we need is to improve on our process. You see, when you look at our electoral process, especially the polling day processes, they are so open that if the parties and the stakeholders take a keen interest, starting with the display of voters' registers. Somebody goes and say, "Oh, my people are not on the register," but do you check it with yourself when they were displaying? When it comes to the electoral polling itself, when people say there was about staffing, but under the law, they open the ballot box at a certain time. There must be presence of some people who are voters must be present there. Were you all there when this thing was happening? When they completed the voting process, were you present when they were counting and announcing the results? Did you pick your declaration sheet or form to keep it and know that in case somebody announces something different, at least I have my own result? Right. So if you follow all that process, there will be a problem.
In 30 seconds, Professor, your parting shot.
You have the declaration forms of the 1 million.
2026 is coming. Politicians are exciting us. But I think that as of now, it's the Electoral Commission to prove that it can have a credible election. It is on the spot from both those who are in government and outside government, and it is diminishing the trust the citizens have in it.
Professor Gerard Gareja, Mr. Moses Byarhanga, and Mr. Godbert Mushabe. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for the time and for your submission. And you, the listener, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company. Good night and God bless Uganda.
Here,